God bless everybody today. It is July 6th of 2024. I hope everybody had an awesome 4th of July. Hope everybody was safe, traveled safely to where they were going, and saw a lot of family members and had an awesome Independence Day. This could be the last Independence Day that's quiet. And I've said for a while how I believe July of 2024 was going to start to really change the dynamic of the Middle East and the whole world as we see multiple things going on right now as we're doing this video. So I want to go into these things. I know it's been a couple weeks almost since I've done a video. I've gone through a number of projects, research to come up with more precise information for you. So this is not going to be a short video. Number one, it's going to encompass current events in the Middle East and how that's affecting us and what's going to probably happen in July, as well as a paradigm update where I've added additional information to the chart and honed in on a couple of dates that I believe that will matter based on the Jewish calendars and things like that. Hopefully I can cover everything. I've made a number of changes, but the charts haven't really changed. I'm just adding more depth to the charts. So realize when I say I've changed the charts, the paradigm is basically the same chart it's been. I'm just honing in on specific dates, and we're right here on most of these dates that I'm working with. I've also added a number of additional blood moons, solar eclipse, and different aspects to the charts. Once we get there, I'll try to break those down also. So hopefully I'll hit all of the different changes that I've made. There has been quite a few, but they're just additional upgrades to the charts we already have. So if you've been following this channel and how I lay prophecy out, I use a history lesson from the past as an example of what's coming into the future, and that three kings of the past, Zedekiah, Jehoiakim, and Nebuchadnezzar, reflect three kings of today, Reuben Rivlin, Isaac Herzog, and Erdoğan of Turkey, because they were in the exact time and position that they were in the past as they are today. So they reflect them or mirror them almost exactly. So the question is, as I've always thought, if you go through the Bible and you actually start to dissect the history of the Jews and things like that, you would understand that if you go back into Alexander the Great's movements, you will see the exact same movements occur with Turkey as Erdogan gets ready to go down into Syria and Iraq. Now, as you can see from this live map. Now these are live maps. This is July 6th when it was updated, but basically they update them every couple days. This is the closest thing I've got. Actually, they've updated them in the last 3 hours, and it gives you a real good breakdown of the activity against, in this case, the Kurds. You can also dissect this down into Turkey or other regional players, things like that, but they really give you a really nice breakdown of what's coming out, and they give you real-time information. Now, what I've been talking about is that Turkey would come down into this area here. Now, they're going to be bombing this whole northern front, and they're also going to be pushing their armor in and their army and their military in about 25 to 30 miles into the Syrian and the Iraqi border, as we've shown you on news articles and things that we've gone over. Another thing that I wanted to bring up though in this is that they actually have shut down all the crossings down and through this area. Okay, that is extremely important because they're trying to block off the Kurds or any area player that might affect this area and through here. And Turkey's going to come down through this area into Lebanon towards Tyre. Okay, now I tried to hone down exactly when the Battle of Tyre, Lebanon would occur and Turkey would be there. And if you go back in the history books, you would see that they give you a timed slot. And so when you go in and look at the siege of Tyre, Lebanon, when Alexander the Great actually went in and took it, he started this campaign around January. It ended in July. And so I've been targeting these dates around May, June, July, because I didn't know exactly when Erdogan would go in to Syria, invade, and then actually go down into Lebanon to Tyre. But we're in July now. He's getting ready to do this. There's a lot of news feeds out here. There's a lot happening on the ground, and we will cover a number of these articles. But I wanted to show you the reason I've been fudging on these dates is I can't lock down a specific date of the siege, the original day that it starts. Now, I can on some of these other battles that are coming up because they tell you in the history books what they are. This one was a long siege where he comes out of Turkey, goes down into Syria, goes down into Lebanon, and then he has to build this causeway to this island. And I mean, there's a massive siege for months, and they're not sure they're actually going to even accomplish this. And then they bring the Navy in later from Cyprus and all kinds of things to take this city out. We have modern technology. They don't have to build causeways and, huge uh, catapults and big towers and things, siege towers and things like that. So it's not going to be like that. And it's going to be quick. And you've already have a lot of destruction down there where you've got Hezbollah going against Israel. And so when Turkey comes down through there and it's going to be fairly quick. Turkey's also working with Assad right now. They're having meetings to determine whether they can normalize so Turkey can do what he wants to do here. So Erdogan's on a time schedule, and I keep telling you this. He's on a time schedule. God has built a time schedule into the Bible and a paradigm which you can actually go and easily do now because we don't have to do in conversions, and the kings, so it's easy to go look at those, look at the Jewish calendars, come up with the dates, and I've shown you how to do all that. Okay, Erdogan is in the process though of trying to get Assad to work with him so he doesn't have to have any conflict going down into Lebanon to help the Lebanese people as well as the Palestinian people, which he's getting ready to go down to by October. Okay, so you're going to see this siege on Lebanon and this consolidation of Tyre under Turkey, and then he's going to, by October, he will be down in Gaza and overcoming Palestine and that area. And if you have to look at the map, you'll realize for Turkey to take his armor down into Palestine, he has to go between Jerusalem and Jordan, which is in Israel. So he's already going to be having Israel under duress and potentially under siege, but the city of Jerusalem is not going to be under siege immediately. That is going to come later as he comes back around in this equation. But just realize that Erdogan is forming his alliances. He's probably got his F-16s now because we've already inked that, so he doesn't have to really worry about that anymore. I haven't seen any articles about whether he's received them, but they've inked it, and so he is going to get them, and I'm sure we will give them to him. Assad is not a big fan of Erdogan, but I think if Erdogan stresses he's bringing armor down, he's going to go after this in a major confrontation with Israel against them attacking Palestine and Lebanon, that Assad's not going to get in his way because who would? Turkey's a massive army and he has a lot of drones and different things like that. This is going to affect the Mediterranean Sea, the Black Sea, and fuel will immediately X up possibly 2 or 3 times what it is now, and it's hitting close to $90 a barrel as we speak. So now, one of the reasons I believe this will break out in July is that Erdogan has a meeting with NATO and a couple of different groups this month. NATO is not, he's moving to BRICS. So Turkey's moving to BRICS and he's moving away from the dollar as well as NATO. I believe he will leave NATO, and I believe He will use our F-16s against Israel and us, or anyone that gets in his way, and that he's going to attend these summits to determine when he's going to break out. And we have this summit with NATO on the 9th, I believe. And so, yeah, the 9th through the 11th, he will be there with the NATO leaders. And I do not believe he's going to get the answers that he wants. And so this is when he's going to start doing the breakout just shortly after that. But I can't give you a specific time in July. Now, will he make it down to Tyre by the end of July? Possibly, because I think once he gets in this game, he's going to unload everything onto the process to get down there and do what he has to, and God's going to ordain him to allow him to do this. And so there's not going to be anybody really to stop Erdogan from doing this. And so you're going to see him go to these meetings. You're going to see a lot of rhetoric down here, a lot of news feed about it. Erdogan's not going to be happy with the answers. And then what we're going to see is he's going to basically just break out against NATO and say, look, I don't care anymore. I've got what I need from you all. And I have to go down and deal with this problem down in Palestine and Lebanon because I hate the Jews. I hate Israel, and I'm going to destroy them to save these people. And so I believe that's what he's going to do. He's also going to the Shanghai Cooperation Organizational meeting, and you can see from this map the areas that are being affected. If he joins this organization, that is an east against west. And also look at that. It also encompasses basically the whole nations that are going to end up, except for a few of them down here in Africa. A few nations are going to be affecting the 10 nations that go against Israel in the end times, as we've been talking about. So it's extremely important that we sort of put all this into perspective. But yes, he's going to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and this is a defensive organization established by China and Russia in 2001. So that ought to tell you something, because it all has to deal with economics, political, and international security, and how that's going to affect him as he moves away from NATO. That's extremely important. And also he is joining BRICS, or he's in the process of joining BRICS, because he wants to get away from the dollar. And he does not, look, he's a dictator like Putin, like Xi, like all these other guys. And so he fits right into this group of people. He loves this specific group of people that have his ideologic, and they don't fight him because they're doing the same thing in their countries. You know, Russia's moving their footprint, China's moving their footprint, Turkey's getting ready to expand their footprint, and they have been expanding their footprint for over 20 years all over the Middle East, from Cyprus to Greece to Africa to the Middle East, Iraq, Syria. They've been bombing these guys and the Kurds forever over there. Since 1984, he's been expanding his footprint over there. But now he's got a cooperation with Iraq. He's looking for a cooperation with Syria, and he's going to probably get it, and that's going to make his job a whole lot easier as we move forward here. Now, on the Turkish side, and that's what I mean, go to different Turkish live map or the Kurd live map or different things like that. You can see how Erdogan is planning an invite with Assad to see he can get cooperation. He's going to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. He's not happy with the situation in Israel and Gaza, even though Gaza might be winding down with a ceasefire. I think Israel wants to do that to try to offset their attack on Hezbollah, because Hezbollah just launched over 200 rockets into their country because they killed a military leader over there. So that's extremely important. If you go out and look in the news, there was a major uptick in this Hezbollah attack just in the last 24 hours. So that's extremely important. And so you can go through these different articles and see just how active this has been. Really active here in the last week, 3 weeks. And if you come back to the Kurdish map, it's even more active. Look, they are trying to neutralize or genocide these PKK groups, which they believe, Turkey believes are terrorist groups, and they also are part of the Kurdish groups, and so they're trying to eliminate them. But look at the amount of attacks and uptick of different confrontations out here between the Kurds. Now, this is all Kurds. Just in the last few days, this is really starting to come up. There's that crossing closure. So this is the last crossing. They're not allowing anyone in and out. Wish we could do that on our border, but we can't seem to figure that out. I guess we should watch other countries and see how they're doing it. But look at all, this is the last week. All these articles are coming out. Look at the uptick out here. And I just want to make you realize that this is starting to expand quickly. So how is this going to break out in July, and how is this going to move us forward, and what have I adjusted on the charts to sort of give you the clearest optic I can so that you have the best information to move forward here and prepare as much possible oil in your lamps so that you can get through this through tribulation. You know, we're in the seals right now. Once you get that signing of a treaty with Antichrist, which is not on the ground yet, because we're in the seals or the birth pains or the sorrows right now, we haven't hit tribulation. The period between tribulation and great tribulation is between the signing of the treaty between the nations against Israel. Yes, against Israel, because Israel will be under massive duress, to abomination of desolation. And that is a 1260-day gap. That is tribulation between the signing of the treaty to abomination of desolation. Once you hit abomination of desolation, you start into great tribulation. So if you get people right now saying you're in tribulation, you're not. You're not in tribulation yet. It's not even bad out here yet. This is just starting. Tribulation is the time when he signs the treaty with the nation, Antichrist does, to abomination of desolation, which starts great tribulation, and then you see the two witnesses perish, and then he shortens the second half, or the elect wouldn't survive. So that's extremely important. So you need to understand where you are in time, and right now you're in the birth pains, sorrows, and you haven't been raptured yet, because you aren't going to be raptured. Yes, I know that's a terrible thing to tell you, that you're still going to be here until the seventh trumpet. You're going to be here until the Feast of Trumpets of 28, which is September 21st, in my opinion, because he has to fulfill the fall feast. In Leviticus 23, it tells you about these feasts, that he fulfilled the spring feast. He'll come back, fulfill the fall feast. These are his high holy dates, and they have to be observed to the letter. You cannot fudge on these dates. They're extreme. They're that important. Period. And he says they will always be important forever. And so we must understand, to him, they are extremely important. They are essential to the laws and what we will see into the eternity, because we will be under Torah. And I know that's hard for people to get their head wrapped around, but it will be a Jewish king in a Jewish nation, because it's a Jewish God, and it has a Jewish book called the Bible, not a Christian book. It's not a Christian book. It's a Jewish book. Okay? People need to understand that. That's both the Old and New Testament. And yes, it works with both the Jews and the Gentiles. And we were grafted into the tree, so it should. So that's extremely important. So let's go to the chart, and I'll show you what I've changed here and why July is going to really matter. And I've really honed in on a lot of dates, and I've added some really cool information, but the chart really hasn't changed. But I have updated it on the website. So if you go to my free Wix site at endofdayssurvival.com, I don't charge any money out here for anything. I don't sell anything. I'm not going to ever sell anything on my site. I'm not here to profit from God, and you guys can say whatever you want about my teachings. I'm giving you the best information that I can as an analyst. Okay, it's extremely important that we break this book down so we can understand its structure and what it's trying to tell us. Look, he gave you a survival manual to the end here. It's not just to read it and then walk off and then hope nothing happens. It's going to happen. So he's trying to explain this to you and what you need to do to get ready. And I believe that we have all of the information in the Bible, and he gives us an extremely clear picture of what's coming. So what I've done, if you come down here, is I've updated these two charts. This chart is basically the same, only it goes into some text information also about the chart and how, like the breakdown of seals, tribulation and great tribulation is, how we come up with a strong generation, what potentially, is God's time to our time if we break it down to an hour of God's time to what we have here on earth, because a day of God is like 1,000 years to us, and so we need to understand how to do those things. So you can see a lot of that information here on this chart. The chart that I'm going to bring you to is this chart, because this gives you the timetable and the timeline that I've been working off of forever. So let's go look at that chart. So if you click on that button, so once the chart pops up, it gives you basically, and here we go with the count, guys. I'm going to always give you the count. We're at 1,538 days from today to the Feast of Trumpets of 28, which is September 21st of 2028. So like I say, the reason I give you that is because I believe that if you go to the fall feast in Leviticus 23, he explains when he's going to come back. And if you also go back into all the different scriptures, he tells you it's on the last trumpet, all these different things. It's on the seventh trumpet. So you need to understand when it occurs. It's not a pre-tribulation thing. It's actually a pre-wrath rapture. And so you have today 1,538 days to that first day of the fall feast of 28, and that's extremely important that we know how much time, or approximately how much time, we have. Now, the reason people will get upset with me at this moment in time is they say, well, you can't know the time or the date that he comes back. And then they say that you can't know anything basically about time or dates or anything like that, because that just throws everything else out. And you're like, really? He says, you don't know the exact time or date that he comes back. Not exactly. But if you look at Leviticus 23, he gives you a pretty good determination. And also, if you look at Psalm 90:10 and the strong generation, it has to happen before 2028, the end of 2028. You also hit the end of a Shemitah cycle. So all these things matter. We're in this Shemitah cycle between September of 2022 to September of 2028, 29 actually. And so, but when you get to 28, the end of 28 fall feast, that breaks you into 29. You get what I'm saying? And so you can't go any further, because then it moves you into a new Shemitah cycle, and then you start the next year, 7-year cycle, and we would have to start this whole process over again, in my opinion, and look at where we are in time right now as everything's breaking out. So as you get into this chart, I've adjusted a number of these blood moon dates down here. I found a lot more information on a better site, and so I'm going to show you some of these things. I've added a whole lot more information on this bottom section, as well as I've adjusted some basic dates inside here. And that's what I mean. This chart hasn't changed. I'm just giving you better optics, and so you can see more specific dates based on the calendar dates that they happened in the past. I believe they'll happen almost exactly the same in the future, because they have to happen on a lot of the Jewish calendar dates that really matter. These major holidays or different events that happen during the Jewish calendar dates through these blood moon, these solar eclipses, all these different cycles really matter, and he tells us to watch all these things, and so I do. And I expect hopefully you guys are watching all this stuff too. So let's go look at this portion of the chart first, and then we'll go down into the blood moons, and I'll show you what I've changed on that. So if you're on the chart, I'm between the continual burn offerings being stopped, which was actually in the news. There was this guy, this rabbi, that stopped this on a very specific date that matters to your 1290 and 1335 days in Daniel 8 and 12. So that's extremely important. I believe it's Daniel 12 if I'm not mistaken. Then when you come over to here, this is your signing of your 7-year treaty, which I indicate would happen on April 10th of 2025, because that is the start of your 1260 days to the Feast of Trumpets of 28. And so that's extremely important that we know those time frames that are going on there. So I wanted to bring you in here so you could see where I am in the chart and how it's going to affect us. So what have I adjusted out here? Not a whole lot. I've taken the question marks off because I found more specific dates that I believe that are going to matter to us. And so I'm going to blow this up just a little bit so that it's a little easier to see. And so we're right here. And so I've talked about how if you go into the history books, you will see this play out if you look at Alexander the Great's movements and how he went through the Middle East in approximately about a year and a half. It was that quick. Okay, now we're talking modern technology here, and this is going to be even quicker, because just as Alexander was moved through God to do the things that he did, Turkey, Erdogan, will also be moved through God to accomplish the things that he's going to do. And this is extremely important that you understand that God is always in control of all the things out here, and that he is controlling the situation even though it looks bleak. He has his method, and he told you what it was in a book called the Bible, the Jewish book called the Bible. So we're going to walk through about 5 or 6 steps here, just to give you an idea exactly why I'm giving you this information and why it matters. And you're going to see it play out, because the charts have been playing out pretty much exactly as they've been indicating they would, because the paradigm is built into the Bible. I didn't come up with the paradigm. The paradigm's in the Bible. I just figured out where it was and how to figure it out through insight, through a higher being, I believe. But whatever, you can say whatever you want about that. I'm showing you the information, and hopefully you'll get some use out of it. It has nothing to do with me. So we've got Daniel 8 starting here because Turkey's going to go down and invade into Syria and Iraq this month. Now, I can't give you a specific date, because if you go into the Battle of Tyre, it doesn't give you a specific date. These are one of those vague ones. It says like January to July. Now, the reason it says January to July is because it took him time to get down to Lebanon, and then he had to do a massive siege against this island, fortress, massive fortress, unimpenetrable in most cases. But Alexander, through God, got this job done basically, and he ended his siege in July. We're in July right now, and I'm telling you, Turkey's getting ready to break out, as I've been talking about, and come down into this area. Now, if you go into this map, you can see easily his movements, and this is extremely important. So look, Alexander came out of Greece. That's why you talk about the Grecian armies. That's Javan. That's actually Turkey, because Alexander came in here, established his kingdom in Turkey. The seat of Satan's in Turkey. The 7 churches in Turkey. Gog Magog's in Turkey. There's so much going on in Turkey. I've talked about how Mystery Babylon is probably the seat of Satan, or the seat of the beast, which is Pergamus, Turkey. And that's a fairly new concept. So that's something I've done a lot of reporting about. I've done articles and videos on that if you want to go look at those. So Alexander came out of Greece into Lydia at the time, into Turkey. This was Persian at the time. He's going against the Persian. He's driving them to the east, but he's going to come down into Tyre, Lebanon, and Gaza, into Egypt, and then back to Gaugamela, and then down to Baghdad, to Shush. Then we see Daniel 8 complete, because once the Kurds align with Iran, that collapses. Both of those nations fall, and now Iran is under the chapter or the leadership of Turkey at this point. Once that happens, then they're going to come back against Israel. Okay, they do take out a number of these things, but this isn't, we aren't going to worry about any of this stuff over here. Okay, I'm just showing you the movements that he did, and then see, he comes back to Israel around February, March, and I've got that massive conjunction of blood moons, solar eclipses, all kinds of stuff going on in March. You got Ramadan going on, you got Passover going on, all kinds of stuff happening in March of 25, and that's going to be a huge month with a sixth seal event potential. So on my chart, and I've had this out there for a while, that I figured that the siege on Lebanon from Turkey would happen between May and July, because I didn't know. I just couldn't give you an answer on that, guys, but it's going to happen in July, and it looks like Turkey's getting ready to break out. If it is in July, it's going to be shortly after that, but I believe this is going to fall pretty much the path that Alexander and the time frame he did it in, because it has to. And God's already given us the story. He's already built the story. If we can just reflect it to what's going on in the future, it will mirror it almost exactly, I believe. At least that's what I believe. So if you come back to the chart, we just talked about how Daniel 8 is going to start, and he's going to see Turkey invade Syria and Iraq around July, sometime this month. The other thing that's going on, though, is, as I've shown you in 2 Kings 24, I've talked about this so many times. You go to the first 4 verses, it talks about how Turkey's preparing to go into invade Syria, to go down and help the Palestinian people. As we see these northern, eastern areas around Israel start to light up, there's literally 4 of them that are indicated, which could potentially even include Iraq, Syria. You're talking about Lebanon, you're talking about West Bank, Golan Heights, potentially even some places in Jordan, different things because of the areas that he tells us about. And so I also, as you're watching the ceasefire with Gaza potentially take hold, because Israel doesn't want to fight a two-pronged war. They want to get rid of that war before they go north, but they don't have a choice, because Hezbollah's and Israel going back and forth, and it's really accelerating to the point where now we've seen a high official on Hezbollah die, and we've just seen 200 missiles get sent into Israel, and this is going to start to overwhelm their iron domes and things like that. And so this is extremely important. So Hezbollah is also going to join this battle sometime this month. Okay, and I've indicated that on the old charts too. This hasn't changed that much. I'm just letting you guys know. So we see then, after this starts out to break out in July, then if you go into October, now there's no date on the actual date of the start of the Battle of Gaza. Okay, but it only lasts a month. That's extremely important. So probably at the beginning of the month, ends at the end of the month. And if you look at the siege of Gaza, it happens to start at around the beginning of October to the end of October. I can't give you any more specific dates, and I've looked at I don't know how many articles to try to give you specific dates. If you know specific dates, if you can give me the article or information through a link or something, please do that, because I'm always trying to adjust these charts so they're the most accurate as I can give to you. So the Battle of Gaza will happen around October. When you get into the Battle of Gaugamela, which is when the Kurds collapse from Erbil, Iraq, down towards Baghdad to Shush, and then we see the Battle of the Persian Gate, or against the Kurds. Once the Kurds and the Persians align, Turkey comes on them and crushes them. That's Daniel 8. The Battle of Gaugamela indicates that it starts on October 1st of this year. Okay, if you got to look at it as a futuristic thing. So we would see that happen around October 1st, and that's extremely important if you go out to the Jewish calendar. I want to show you a couple things here. This one could matter, and this is what I mean. God works with some really interesting events that are astrological, and events like solar and lunar eclipses that happen on very specific holidays in his calendars, because they work off, look, his calendars work off the moon and the sun, so it makes sense that these things would line up perfectly, as they would in God's world, perfectly. So when you go to the 1st of October, what happens? We see Rosh Hashanah, which is the Feast of Trumpets. Okay, when you go to Rosh Hashanah, this is the eve of Rosh Hashanah, is on the 2nd and 3rd. The 3rd is Tishri 1. That's the first day of the civil calendar, so that's extremely important. And also, if you go into solar and lunar eclipses worldwide in 2024, and I really like this calendar, so this is why I've added a lot of additional information, because I've added a lot of these solar and lunar eclipses to the chart. But look what happens here as you go down here. On October 2nd, we have an annual solar eclipse. That's interesting. So that happens on the first day of basically the eve of the Feast of Trumpets. That's extremely important. So you have this eclipse working into the Feast of Trumpets, or the very first day of the civil calendar. That is extremely important. And this would be the potential date that we would see maybe the siege on Gaza, as well as a secondary front forming for the Battle of Gaugamela, which happens on October 1st. So two things are happening here. Turkey's driving down to Gaza, and he's going against Palestine and those areas, consolidating them to help the Palestinian people against Israel. And he's also forming a front against Erbil, Iraq at the very same time. So when he gets there, he's just going to drive up there from Egypt back over to Erbil, and then he's going to go against the Kurds at the Battle of Gaugamela. So there's a two-pronged front going on here. One against Gaza, which happens in October, and one against Erbil, Iraq, named Gaugamela. And another one at the Battle of Gaugamela in October. Now, I know there's a year difference in time, but we have a modern day war going on here, and it's compressing. And the reason I say that is, if you look at a map in the Middle East, I'll try to explain what's going on here. So Turkey has got this front that they're setting up a zone, and they've been setting up this zone for years now. Actually, around 2019, they started setting up this zone, but in the last couple of years, it's really moved down about 30 to 40 miles down into both Syria and Iraq. Well, Erbil's about here, and Erdogan just brought convoys down into this area. If you go look at some of the live feed out here. And this is actually the feed that I found, that they're moving into northern Iraq. So you've got literally convoys. If you go down into, hopefully I can show you this live on the map. You can see where they're at, okay? These are extremely important, because Erbil's right here. Here's Mosul. Mosul's extremely important. We fought hard to get Mosul, just to lose it again. Erbil's here. This is the Kurdish capital. This is extremely important, so you need to understand he's driving forces down into here to deal with the Kurds, because he doesn't want them to have their elections. He stopped those last month, and now they're going to try to have them, I believe, in September, if I'm not mistaken, based on my memory. And so he's going to stop that from happening. And that's interesting, because if you have the Kurdish elections around that time, he's going to end up in Erbil around October. They pushed this off till October 20th. And so it was supposed to be held on June 10th. Now let's move to October 20th, and I've talked about how October is going to be extremely important with the Battle of Gaugamela and Erbil, and how he's not going to allow this election to happen. So look how that all lines up. That's what I mean. Everything lines up. You just need to understand that he's wrote you this timeline. He's given you this map. We need to be following it. And I'm guaranteeing you, as you move forward in the next 1,538 days of the Feast of Trumpets, you're going to see a lot of this stuff really play out as it says on the paradigm, because the paradigm is built in the Bible, literally built in the Bible. So if you go back to this chart and you look at the Battle of Gaza, which would be in October, I've got the Battle of Gaugamela starting around the 1st of October. You know, they could actually be down there a little sooner, but it says October. So that makes me believe that he'll be running two fronts. Turkey's going to be pounding this northern border of the Kurds the whole time he's driving down to Tyre, to Gaza, gets to Gaza around October. This is all softened up by October. They're driving convoys down into Iraq towards Erbil right now. Egypt says, no way, man, we're not going to do anything. And so Turkey then brings his army. He leaves a sixth of his armies behind. He brings them back up to Tyre and then shoots over easily. Look, these are not big countries, guys. It doesn't take long for them to move massive, huge armor columns to place to place. So, you know, we went through Desert Storm in like a week. That's how this can go, okay? So when they get to Erbil, you see the Battle of Gaugamela, and then that collapses down. The Kurds collapse to Baghdad, to Shush. And then what happens? You have the Battle of the Persian Gate, which is basically Alexander goes against Darius. After Darius collapses and aligns with Iran or Persia, and then we see those destruction of those two nations, which is Daniel 8. That happens approximately around the start of January 20th. That'd be 25. Then you get back to Israel around the March of 25, which is a terrible month in my opinion. So you have the Battle of Gaza in October of 24. You got Tyre just prior to that in July. You got this Turkey starting the Battle of Gaugamela around October 1st of 2024 based on the chart and the mapping out there of history. Then they come back, or they start the battle. Actually, Daniel 8 ends, and you see Turkey start the Battle of Susa or Shush, Iran, against the Kurds in Iran. That is around January 20th of 2025. And then you see this huge wall of march here. Okay, this is all 25. That is a 6 seal event. You got a 15-day gap between a partial solar eclipse and a blood moon event. There's so much happening in here. You got the start of Ramadan beginning here that runs the whole month of March, which ends on March 30th of 25, and then the day right after that you potentially have a red heifer sacrifice at 2 Nisan and a 6 seal event, because the Lord's going to step his feet on the Mount of Olives, split the Mount of Olives in half, and allow the exodus of the third of the Jews that believe in Jesus to escape and be hidden for the 1260 days, which is getting ready to come up shortly after all these trumpets hit. And we see the 1260 days start popping off before the signing of the treaty with the 7-year Treaty of Nations. Now, I don't believe it's a 7-year treaty. They'll sign a 7-year treaty, but it never plays out, because Antichrist only gets 1260 days of power. And if you go 1260 days forward, that takes you to the Feast of Trumpets of 28. And so that's extremely important. So those are the major changes that I've made. I haven't changed anything beyond this portion of the timeline itself. Now, what I have done is I've added a lot of dates down here at the bottom with the blood moons and solar eclipses, because that time date site that I was showing you with all the different solar and different eclipses on. Basically, has all solar and lunar eclipse worldwide, and I put them down on the chart between 24 and 29. So I believe all of them are out there. And so when you go down into the chart, you can see all of them. You can see the areas that are affecting them. You can see the specific dates. I've adjusted the dates to these dates because I believe that because we have a 24-hour period around the world, we have to deal with you know, especially the Jewish calendars in the evening, they start a new day and things like that. So I went with these dates on the calendars, and you can do a search on every year, okay, that you want to. So you can see all these different dates and things as you move forward. And so I've added these to the charts, and so you can see them and how they affect the events that are coming up too, because like on the Feast of Trumpets coming up, we have a blood or a eclipse. I think you'll be pretty amazed how these line up with the calendar dates above them and how these events affect us. And he's showing us signs that they're coming. And so let's walk through these real quick. And I know it's a little longer video, but they're extremely important and how they reflect the events above them. So we go to September 18th, 2024, we have a partial blood moon event. That's extremely important because as you go into October 2nd of 24, you have an annular solar eclipse, which is the beginning of the Feast of Trumpets. On October 3rd of 24, this is Tishri 1 on the Jewish calendar. This is the very first day of the civil year in their calendar. You also want to reflect that towards the Battle of Gaza and Gaugamela on the chart because you've got these events happening below them. When you go to March 13th and 14th of 25 to March 29th of 25, this is a 15-day gap, a period that I think is extremely important. As you can see, between March 1st and March 31st, you have a lot going on here. You got the beginning of Ramadan. On the very first day of March, you start this 15-day gap between the 14th and the 29th, which I believe is a sixth seal event, okay? And that we potentially will see a siege on Jerusalem at this very time. Potentially Isaac Herzog would be captured as Erdogan gives 10 nations 1 hour of power or 15 days on earth to attack Jerusalem, and then are decimated by a sixth seal event. Okay. You've got this, and that's as we move into March at the very end, because when you get down to the end of March here, you have the end of Ramadan. You have the 2 Nisan, the red heifer sacrifice, also in March, and then we have a sixth seal event down here at the end when Jesus stands on, right here, sixth seal event, when Jesus stands on the Mount of Olives, splits it in half, and then allows the exodus of the 1/3 of the Messianic Jews to escape to Edom or Jordan to be hidden for the 1260 days after the signing of the treaty, which is coming up. So you can see that there. So that's extremely important. So between March 14th of 25, you have this total lunar eclipse wrapped into the end of a 15-day gap of period with a partial solar eclipse with a new moon on that very specific day. Ramadan ends. Red heifer sacrifice could potentially occur. Mount of Olives is split in half. Sixth seal event occurs, and then you start into a trumpet phase prior to a signing of the treaty with the nations and Antichrist. And so that's extremely important. That's all these events that are happening down in through here. Once you come over to this portion of the chart, you'll notice that this really starts getting busy because I've added a lot of different blood moon and solar eclipse events and things like that on here. So September 7th through 8th of 2025, you have a blood moon event that's a complete event. Now, Erdogan will end up dying on the sixth seal, turn into an antichrist through a resurrectional event. I know that's pretty out there, guys, but that's what Isaiah 14 clearly tells you is going to happen many times. Very important. And that we would see a siege on Jerusalem for some period of time where the walls would finally be broken into around July 5th, and the city would be breached on July 5th of 25. And that's extremely important because now you start moving into these additional blood moon solar eclipses and different things like that. So when you go to September 7th, 8th of 25, you have a complete blood moon event. So I've got that gap between July of 25 and February 18th of 26, when God places a lamentation against Egypt and states that he will destroy everything there. And you can see that you have a lot of these events building up to that period of time. September 21st of 25, you have a solar eclipse. It's a partial. February 17th of 2026, you have a solar eclipse that's annular. Then you can see as you can move up into the chart what's going up above it. March 2nd and 3rd of 2026, you have a blood moon event that's complete, which is interesting because when you go into March 4th of 26, Egypt is cast down and the people are destroyed and the king of Egypt is killed by Antichrist. So that is on a complete blood moon event. That's interesting. Wow, what timing, guys. Then on August 12th of 2026, you have a solar eclipse event that's a complete event. I don't see anything above it really. August 27th and 28th to 26th, you have a blood moon event that's partial. You get into September 14th to 26th, and the son of Netanyahu kills that leader that Antichrist assigned. Then when you come back over here, we see some more line up here. February 6th to 27, we have a annual solar eclipse. Then February 20th to 21st, you have of 27, you have a blood moon event that's partial. Then on July 18th and 19th of 27, you have a blood moon event that's partial. You also have Passover in the middle of all that. August 2nd of 27, you have a solar eclipse event that's a complete one. You have August 16th and 17th of 2027, you have a blood moon event that's partial. When you move down the chart a little further here, January 11th and 12th of 28, you have a blood moon event that's partial. You also have Passover coming up of April of 10th and 17th through the 17th of 28. January 26th to 28, you have a annual solar eclipse. July 6th and 7th, you have a partial blood moon event. July 20th to 28, you have a solar eclipse that is a complete. Right after this, then we go into potentially the third temple being destroyed on the 9th of Av. So that's extremely important. So you have this complete solar eclipse on the 22nd of July with a potential 9 days, 9 days later, the third temple being destroyed on the 9th of Av and the destruction of the third temple itself prior to the Feast of Trumpets of 28, because that's where you are on the map. And then when you go out as far as we can here, I wrote these down because I thought they were, something that we should expand out through the Shemitah cycle and different things like that. You have December 31st of 28, January through January 1st of 29, you have a blood moon event that's complete. Now that's interesting that would wrap around the very end of a month to the beginning of a new month on the very first day of that of the Gregorian calendar event. That's just interesting timing. We shouldn't be here because we will be raptured and we'll already be in the 1,000 years. So I don't know if these things will affect us, but he does say that he'll leave the blood and the moon and the sun there so that we can see signs and seasons and things like that. Even though he lights the world for us through his radiance, he still needs these tools. June 12th to 29, you have a solar eclipse event that's partial. June 25th to 26th to 29, you have a blood moon event that's complete. July 11th to 29, you have a solar eclipse event that's partial. December 5th to 29, you have a solar eclipse event that's partial. And December 20th to 21st, 29, you have a blood moon event that's complete. And that's sort of interesting that you would end that year on, at least in our Gregorian calendar, right before Christmas, on a completed blood moon event. And the 7-year Shemitah cycle that runs from September of 2022 to September 9th of 2029 would end on this very date here. And so I just wanted to bring all these different date structures and things to you, show you how I've adjusted this chart. The only thing that, like I said, the only thing I've adjusted are 5 or 6 dates in here, which are real-time dates right now, happening in July mainly, that irradiates and affects us through the 6th seal in March. And then I've added all these additional blood moon and solar eclipses and things down here at the bottom that reflect these dates above it, because I think they matter. And he tells us look for all these different signs and things like that. So it's extremely important that we see all of this and how it all is presented on one chart, so you have a better optic, a much cleaner vision of what is potentially going to happen out here, and how this chart really has pretty much hit on a number of dates as we move forward. Yes, I am adjusting it, minor adjustments to reflect specific dates, but as I've said, I don't think this chart is going to change a whole lot. These dates are set as we move into the next 1,538 days to the Feast of Trumpets, the 28 down here at the end. You're about in here right now. Turkey's getting ready to invade this month of July. Israel's going to shut down, if possible, the Gaza war to move to the Hezbollah war, which is what indicates in 2 Kings 24, verse 1 through 4 mainly, that we would see Turkey prepare, and then we would watch these northern and eastern areas around Israel start a ramp up against Israel. And that siege will continue for some time. It's not going away, with potentially a siege and a breaking in of the walls around July 5th over here of 25. Extremely important as we get into March, we have the 6th seal event, okay? Extremely important, because right after that we see massive destruction through trumpets. The first 4 trumpets take out large swaths of the planet, do major devastation. If you go look at the first 4 trumpets of Revelation, it indicates that. Then you have the 5th trumpet, 6th trumpet, where the Antichrist rises with the false prophet, and a signing of the treaty for 1260 days of madness, walking into the Feast of Trumpets of 28. So extremely important that we keep all this into perspective. July is going to be a major ramp up on so many levels. It's ridiculous, and it's going to affect the markets. You just had a major destructive debate in the U.S. with Joe Biden completely failing, and so now the Democrats are in a total turmoil to determine how they're going to keep Joey on the ticket, or whether they're going to replace him with Kamala. Because if Joe gets removed, Kamala comes in, she's your president until they have another election in November. You have the DNC convention in August, so you will see something happen then, or maybe in the next week when they either try to talk Joe into either staying in the election or getting out because of his health. And we all saw that in the debate. This man is not capable. And I should know, I spent 8 years in a home with my mother with dementia. So if anybody can see this stuff, I'll guarantee you I can. And Joe's been doing this for years and they've been covering it up. So the question I would have there is, should the Democrats have to answer why Joe's been in this condition for some time and they haven't allowed the population or the public to know about this and how this is potentially dangerous, as Joe Biden has the nuclear codes with his son Hunter Biden in the background and his wife basically holding him up and keeping him in the race. And so these are questions we should be asking, and I don't want to get too much further into this. So God bless, have a great night, and be safe.